Right, let's talk about a time when the world's longest undefended border suddenly felt a little spiky. The year is 2018, things were getting weird. The United States, Canada, two countries, roommates with a very, very long driveway, suddenly in a schoolyard, shoving match over trade. The instigator? Donald Trump, a man whose diplomacy sometimes looked like a toddler with a hammer. He woke up one day and decided close allies were a national security threat. Yes, you heard that right. Canada. It was baffling, part of a broader strategy called America First. The idea, protect American industries by making foreign goods more expensive. Trump slapped tariffs on steel, tariffs on aluminum, from pretty much everywhere, including Canada, like putting a toll booth in your shared kitchen. It sent shockwaves through Ottawa and the global economy. So, how did all this start? With two numbers and a word, Section 232. That sounds like a boring classroom number or a little-known clause in a rental agreement. But in reality, it's a dusty emergency lever in the Oval Office. It gives the president power to impose tariffs on imports if an investigation finds those imports threaten national security. It's basically a superpower for a true crisis, like if a hostile nation tried to cripple your ability to build tanks or battleships. Meant for Cold War emergencies, not for friendly neighbors. Now, you might be thinking, Canada? A national security threat? That's confusing and fair. The two countries are key allies in NORAD. Canadian soldiers have fought and died alongside American soldiers. The idea that Canadian steel was a threat was absurd. Okay, let's get basic for a second. What is a tariff? Imagine you want to buy a delicious, authentic Canadian maple syrup. Normally it costs, say, $10. But now the US government has slapped a 25% tariff on it. When the bottle crosses the border, the importer must pay extra tax. That's an extra $2.50. Who pays? The importer passes it on to you, the consumer. So that $10 bottle now sits on the shelf for $12, $50. A tariff is simply a tax on things from other countries. The idea: make foreign products more expensive. So you might choose an American bottle for $11 instead of the $12.50 Canadian one. The government hopes this pushes people to buy domestic products. President Trump's goal: make imported steel and aluminum so expensive that U.S. firms buy American. It's a protectionist strategy, a financial wall around industries. But here's the tricky part: it's not that simple. If the steel you need only comes from Canada, your costs rise, and customers pay more. Faced with these baffling and insulting tariffs, Canada had a choice to make. It could either protest politely and hope for the best, or it could punch back. It chose to punch back, but in the most Canadian way possible, with a carefully calculated, legally sound and strategically targeted list of retaliatory tariffs. On July 1, 2018, Canada Day, the Canadian government rolled out its response. It was a dollar-for-dollar retaliation, taxes on American goods worth the exact same amount. They put a tariff on bourbon. Bourbon hits Kentucky, home state of then-Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. They also targeted dairy products. Dairy hit Wisconsin, home state of then-House Speaker Paul Ryan. Inflict economic pain on key constituencies so those politicians would pressure President Trump to back down. It was a political bullseye. The list was diverse: ketchup, mustard, jam, orange juice, toilet paper, sleeping bags, playing cards, motorboats, lawnmowers. Message: we didn't start this fight, but we're prepared to see it through. At the very heart of this conflict was steel. For over a century, the United States and Canadian steel industries have been deeply intertwined. Canadian iron ore to American mills, American coal to Canadian factories. A steel beam might cross the border multiple times before it ends up in a finished product. Like a Ford F-150 truck or a Boeing airplane component, the 25% tariff on steel and 10% on aluminum threw a giant wrench into this finely tuned machine. A seamless process turned bureaucratic and expensive. For Canadian producers, the tariffs were a direct, painful blow. Their biggest customer was next door. Margins were slashed to keep clients, others lost orders altogether. Production slowed, layoffs followed, uncertainty spread. Hamilton, Sault Ste. Marie. In the U.S., users of steel were squeezed: cars, appliances, construction, pipes, and more. Winners and losers, often in the same town. Tariffs intended as a precise weapon caused broad collateral damage. Canada's response was a masterclass in making a political point through a shopping list. A specific and varied list ensured people across the US would feel the pinch. Canada put a 10% tariff on American-made ketchup, a direct shot at big US processors. Canadian shoppers reached for local brands using Canadian-grown tomatoes. Condiments became a symbol of pride. Tariffs on boats hit manufacturers in states like Florida and Minnesota. Confectionery costs rose, targeting Pennsylvania giants. Food, household items and more, each tied to a real industry and real workers. The dual purpose, protect Canadian sectors and generate US pressure to end the dispute. An American kayak maker suddenly became 10% pricier in Canada. Sales plummeted. A family candy business saw Canadian orders disappear. In a trade war, casualties are often small and medium-sized businesses and their employees. Canada's list made that point loudly. This trade war wasn't just headlines, it hit ordinary lives. There was confusion, anger, and anxiety on both sides. In Canadian steel towns, careers felt suddenly fragile. Many had family across the border, vacationed in the US, saw Americans as neighbors. To be labeled a security threat felt like a personal insult. A small shop that relied on Canadian customers saw demand vanish after a 10% tariff. They weren't policymakers, just trying to make a living. A buy local wave surged. The ketchup war, as symbol. U.S. farmers watched prices fall and products sit in storage. The trade war became a direct hit to bottom lines, raising the question of who was actually winning. It forced a painful reassessment of costs and benefits. The human toll outlasted the headlines. So, what happened in the end? Thankfully, it didn't last forever, but it dragged on for nearly a year. Businesses suffered, supply chains snarled, and prices rose. American farmers felt it. Canadian metal fabricators felt it. Targeted political pressure started to work. Slowly, but surely. In May 2019, after months of talks, the US, Canada, and Mexico reached an agreement. The US lifted Section 232 tariffs on Canadian and Mexican steel and aluminum. Canada and Mexico lifted retaliatory tariffs. Bourbon flowed, ketchup wars ended, lawnmowers moved. A continental sigh of relief. The truce cleared the way for USMCA, hard to ink a free trade deal amid a tariff fight. Lifting tariffs was key for ratification. New mechanisms were added to watch for steel surges. The threat didn't vanish, briefly revisited in 2020, then reversed. Trust took a hit. Canada learned stability could be upended on a whim. In an interconnected world, a trade war is like throwing a boomerang in a small room. It's going to come back and hit you. Tariffs aim to protect one industry but hurt many others and hit consumers. The US and Canada are economically woven together. Harming one harms the other. In the end, neighbors must find a way to get along.